It has now emerged that on October 13th, the 20th interstellar visitor 3i Atlas may have sent a signal not with sound or radio, but with light pulsing in a sequence too elegant to be random. 5, 8, 13. The same golden code etched into galaxies, sunflowers, and the blueprint of creation itself. Yet just as the pulses began, our satellites went dark and cameras blinked out. The official record vanished. Accident or design? Stay with me to the end, because we might have just been contacted, and the message hidden in the code may be what humanity has waited centuries to hear. If these mysteries have you on edge the way they have me, hit like and subscribe so you do not miss a single revelation as this story unfolds in real time. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from, what time it is there, and whether you think we're getting the whole truth or just the version we're allowed to believe. And if you want this community to grow stronger, share this video on X, Facebook, Reddit, or even your private chats. You are the fuel behind this search for truth. Thank you for having our back. On October 13th, something happened that most of the world missed entirely. The date itself carries weight for those who track cosmic coincidences and historical echoes. It marks exactly 108 years since tens of thousands gathered in Fatima, Portugal, to witness what many described as the sun dancing in the sky. But we are not here to talk about miracles from 1917, at least not yet. We are here because on that exact anniversary, an interstellar visitor may have spoken in the only language that transcends culture, biology, and planetary origin, mathematics. According to researcher David Sereda, the object in question, 3 Atlas, did something comets and asteroids do not do. It pulsed not randomly, not chaotically, but in a precise sequence. Though still not verified by NASA or other official institutions, these claimed findings sent ripples through parts of the astronomy community. 5 pulses, then 8, then 13. If you know anything about mathematics or patterns in nature, those numbers should make you sit up a little straighter. This is the Fibonacci sequence, the mathematical fingerprint that appears in everything from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. Each number is the sum of the 2 before it. 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on into infinity. Here is what makes this unusual. Comets sublimate as they approach the sun. Ice turns to gas. Jets of material spray out in directions set by rotation, composition, and solar heating. These outbursts are messy and irregular. They do not look like carefully timed sequences. Natural objects in space follow thermodynamics and orbital mechanics. They do not count. They do not encode messages. They do not select meaningful numbers from a sequence humans have recognized as special for centuries. And yet, if the observations are accurate, that is precisely what 3i Atlas appeared to do. The Fibonacci sequence is not mathematical trivia. It is woven into the physics of growth. The ratio between consecutive Fibonacci numbers converges on phase. The golden ratio, approximately 1.618. You see it in the proportions of the human body. The structure of galaxies, the branching of trees, the curves of hurricanes. Ancient architects used it to design temples. Renaissance painters used it to compose canvases. Biologists find it in DNA spirals and population dynamics. If you wanted to communicate with another intelligence across the emptiness of space, using Fibonacci would be a brilliant strategy. It is a pattern any technological civilization would likely discover while studying its own world. This is the kind of signal SETI researchers hope to find. Not a random burst of noise, but something structured, intentional, and unmistakably artificial. Prime numbers are often proposed as a first message because regular prime pulses are unlikely to occur naturally. But Fibonacci might be even better. It says we understand growth, recursion, the mathematics that governs living systems. It says we looked at spirals and saw the same numbers you see. It is a handshake across the cosmic distance written in a language older than any human tongue. Now for the twist that makes this story uneasy. As these alleged pulses occurred, NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory reportedly went offline for maintenance. The feed cut. The data stopped. And this was not the only blackout. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's high-rise camera had gone silent earlier on October 1st. The Psyche space probe experienced a communications blackout from September 1st through 5th. 3 separate instrument systems, 3 separate missions, all with gaps in coverage during the window when an interstellar object was potentially broadcasting mathematics at us. Is this coincidence? Technical failures are common in space operations. Instruments age. Electronics degrade in harsh radiation. Maintenance windows are scheduled months in advance. Any one of these blackouts taken alone means little, but all three clustered around the same time as an event that might represent the most significant discovery in human history. That pattern is harder to dismiss. Either we are looking at an unlucky string of failures, or someone somewhere decided we should not see what was happening. The timeline tells a story even if we do not yet know what it means. September 1st, Psyche goes dark. October 1st, high-rise stops returning images. October 13th, the Fatima anniversary, the alleged Fibonacci pulses, and the SDO blackout. Each day a domino, each blackout a piece of data we will never recover. In science, we work with what we have, building theories from evidence and adjusting as new evidence arrives. But what do you do when the evidence is withheld? What do you do when the instruments that should be watching go blind at the critical moment? That is the question we're going to explore together, and it is not a comfortable one. It means considering that we might be investigating not just what happened, but what we were prevented from seeing. It means entertaining the possibility that the greatest signal in human history arrived on schedule, was detected, and then quietly archived away from public view, or accepting that we are pattern-seeking creatures, desperate for meaning, willing to construct narratives from coincidence and failure. Both possibilities unsettle. Both deserve investigation. The numbers 5, 8, 13 hang in the air like a question asked in a language we are only beginning to understand. Behind them lies a cascade of implications that will carry us from interstellar space to particle physics, from medieval poetry to artificial intelligence, from the surface of Mars to the sun-scorched orbit of a visitor from beyond our solar system. This is a story about pattern and meaning, about the gap between what we observe and what we are told, about the possibility that on one October afternoon, while most of humanity scrolled through feeds and worried about ordinary things, the universe leaned in close and whispered a secret we almost missed. You have probably seen the Fibonacci sequence without realizing it. Every sunflower head contains two sets of spirals, one curving clockwise and the other counterclockwise. Count carefully and the numbers are consecutive. Fibonacci pairs like 21 and 34 or 34 and 55 depending on the species. Seeds pack themselves this way because it is the most efficient use of space, allowing the maximum number of seeds to fit the area. Evolution did not learn this from a textbook. The mathematics is built into growth itself. The chambered nautilus builds its shell in a near logarithmic spiral that follows the golden ratio. Each new chamber is about 5 times larger than the previous one, creating the curve that has become a symbol of natural perfection. Hurricanes spiral according to the same mathematics. Galaxies spin their arms outward in golden spirals containing billions of stars. The proportions appear in the human face. Ratios from chin to brow to crown approach V. Your fingers contain bones that diminish in lengths that approximate golden relationships. We are literally built from this pattern. This is why SETI researchers expect any deliberate signal might contain either prime numbers or Fibonacci sequences. These are not arbitrary human inventions, but discoveries. Mathematical truths that exist whether or not we find them. An alien civilization orbiting a distant star would discover the same Fibonacci sequence, because it is inherent to spiral growth and efficient packing. They would find the golden ratio in their own biology, their own planetary structures, their own galaxies. If you want to greet someone who evolved under another sun in a language no voice can pronounce, numbers are your best bet. 5 plus 8 equals 13 everywhere in the universe. This returns us to David Serida's claim about 3i Atlas. According to his observations, the object emitted 5 pulses, then 8, then 13, then silence. As an opening call that choice is clever, the sequence is long enough to be unmistakably deliberate but short enough to repeat and recognize. It is a simple proof of understanding recursion and growth mathematics. It says, I know you will recognize these numbers because any civilization with telescopes and arithmetic will have discovered them. Now that I have your attention, you will watch for what comes next. Compare this to what we expect from natural objects. When a comet approaches the sun, radiation heats its surface, turning ice directly into gas in sublimation. This outgassing creates jets and a tail that points away from the sun. The jets are chaotic, influenced by spin, composition, and where the ice pockets lie beneath the crust. Sometimes a comet has multiple jets. Sometimes they pulse as the object rotates and different areas face the sun, but they do not produce clean countable pulses in a mathematically significant sequence. That would require timing and control and intention. Here is where we pump the brakes. Everything described relies on Serida's observations and interpretations. These claims are not verified by NASA, ESA, or any official astronomical body. No peer-reviewed paper has confirmed a Fibonacci pulse sequence. We do not have multiple independent observers reporting the same phenomenon. Science does not advance on a single claim, no matter how compelling. It advances on repeatable observations and data that multiple teams can examine and verify. Without that verification, we are in the realm of intriguing hypothesis rather than established fact. But intriguing hypotheses are intriguing precisely because they could be true. The lack of official confirmation does not make the observation false. It puts us in that uncomfortable zone between detection and verification. Between seeing something and knowing what we saw, history is full of discoveries that began with one person noticing something odd that did not fit the standard model, and then spending years convincing others to look. Galileo saw moons around Jupiter. Henrietta Leavitt saw patterns in variable stars that let us measure the universe. Fritz Zwicky noticed that galaxies moved too fast and proposed dark matter decades before anyone took the idea seriously. So how do we evaluate a claim like this when official sources are silent and data feeds are interrupted? We look at what the claim predicts and what it would mean if true. We ask whether the mathematics supports the interpretation. We look for corroborating details, timeline matches, and other anomalies that might point to the same underlying truth. And we stay honest about what we do not know, about where evidence ends and speculation begins. Pattern detection kept our ancestors alive. It also makes us prone to see patterns that are not there. This tendency is called apophenia. It matters here because an intelligence trying to communicate would deliberately craft a signal to exploit our pattern detection. You would not send random noise and hope someone decodes it. You would send something that lights up the pattern circuits in the brain. 5813 does exactly that. It is simple enough to recognize immediately and specific enough to rule out most natural explanations. If this were the opening move in a contact scenario, it would be brilliantly designed, so we are suspended between two possibilities, and the only honest position is to acknowledge both. Either we are witnessing the human mind doing what it does best, finding order in chaos and constructing meaning from coincidence, or we are seeing the first deliberate mathematical message from beyond our solar system, time to arrive on a historically charged anniversary and promptly buried beneath a cascade of convenient instrument failures. The mathematics is real. The Fibonacci sequence is real. The golden ratio is real. Whether 3i Atlas actually emitted 5813 on October 13th remains unverified. But the question has been asked, and questions like this do not go away because official sources remain silent. Let us travel back to October 13th, 1917. Portugal is 3 years into a world war. The country is exhausted, divided, and anxious about the future. In a small agricultural region north of Lisbon, 3 shepherd children have been claiming for months that a luminous figure appears on the 13th of each month, delivering messages about prayer, penance, and coming events. The Catholic Church is skeptical but intrigued. Word spreads. On that October day, between 30,000 and 70,000 people converge on a field near the village of Fatima. Many hope to witness a miracle. Many others come to debunk what they assume is a childish fantasy or a fraud. What happened next has been debated ever since. Multiple witnesses, including journalists, skeptics, and believers, report that after rain, the clouds parted and the sun appeared to move in impossible ways. Some said it spun, others said it danced. Others said it plunged toward Earth before returning to its normal place. Colours rippled across the sky. Wet clothes dried in sudden heat. The display lasted roughly 10 minutes and then the sun looked ordinary again. To this day, no single scientific consensus explains what so many saw. Theories range from collective misperception to atmospheric optics to retinal distortion from staring at a bright sky. Now fast forward exactly 108 years, October 13th, 2025. An object from interstellar space on a path that carried it from beyond our solar system allegedly emits a mathematical sequence at the precise moment Earth's primary solar monitoring satellite goes offline. The coincidence of dates is exact, not approximately the same week. The identical calendar day If you think coincidences are just coincidences, this may not move you. If you are the kind of person who sees patterns and wonders whether they mean something, this demands investigation. The number 108 carries weight in many traditions. In Hindu and Buddhist practice, there are 108 beads on a mala used for meditation. Texts speak of 108 Upanishads. Some list 108 names for the Buddha. In mathematics, 108 is 12 times 9 numbers that recur in sacred geometry and in ancient cosmology. The distance from Earth to the Sun is roughly 108 times the Sun's diameter. The distance from Earth to the Moon is roughly 108 times the Moon's diameter. Ancient observers noticed these proportions long before modern instruments. Whether these relationships mean anything beyond human pattern recognition is debatable. What is not debatable is that choosing this date for a signal if a signal was sent would maximize the chance that certain people would notice. Those who track cosmic events, those interested in SETI, those who study the overlap of astronomy and historical anomalies. It is targeting in the softest sense. If you wanted to communicate with Earth and needed to cut through the noise of thousands of passing objects, you might time your message to a date that already carries meaning in our records and cultural memory. You would create a mirror between past and present, inviting comparison and investigation. This takes us into territory that makes many scientists uncomfortable. We are linking acclaimed scientific observation to religious history, mixing astronomy with mysticism, and allowing narrative to color analysis. The criticism is fair and necessary. Confirmation bias is real. Once you decide a cosmic event is connected to a historical event, you start finding connections everywhere. You read significance into details that are actually random. You ignore evidence that does not fit and amplify evidence that does. This is how conspiracies spread, how pseudoscience dresses up as discovery, how genuine mysteries are buried under layers of wishful thinking. But consider the alternative perspective. Across history, major astronomical events have been timed to cultural calendars by observers who wanted impact. Ancient priests scheduled ceremonies with eclipses to demonstrate power. Modern agencies sometimes choose symbolically resonant launch dates. We are a species invested in the relationship between cosmic time and cultural time. If an intelligence wanted a message to be recognized, discussed and investigated rather than dismissed as instrument noise, choosing a date with historical resonance would be strategic. It would create the attention and the debate we are having now. The Fatima event has not been confirmed as supernatural by any scientific body, but it has not been fully explained either. It remains in a liminal space between documented testimony and verified phenomenon. The October 13th, 2025 claim occupies a similar space. Something allegedly happened. The timing is extraordinary. Official verification is absent. The two dates become mirrors across a century, each reflecting and amplifying the other. That mirror implies planning that feels almost absurd. If 3i Atlas is a natural object on a path determined millions of years ago, how could its timing align with human calendar anniversaries? It could not unless someone adjusted its trajectory. Unless the object is not purely natural but guided to arrive on a specific date with precision. That level of control and the cultural literacy to choose October 13th would suggest an intelligence that has watched us a long time. Or this is simply our remarkable ability to weave random cosmic events into a narrative that feels meaningful even when it is not. Both explanations remain on the table. We should not dismiss the coincidence because it is uncomfortable, nor accept it as proof because it feels significant. The mirror exists, 108 years separate two October 13ths, one witnessed by thousands in a Portuguese field, one allegedly detected by instruments that then went dark. Whether that mirror reflects truth or our desire for meaning is the question that guides the rest of this journey. Data is the lifeblood of modern astronomy. We no longer discover planets by looking through eyepieces. We discover them in gigabytes of light curves from orbital observatories. We no longer find asteroids by sweeping the sky with human eyes. We find them through automated surveys that photograph the entire visible sky and use algorithms to detect motion. The great discoveries of recent decades arise from enormous datasets processed by computers, from gravitational waves to the cosmic microwave background maps. When the data stream is interrupted, we go blind and the universe carries on unwitnessed. Let us set a timeline of blackouts that cluster around the October 13th, 2025 window. First comes Psyche, a spacecraft on a mission to study a metal-rich asteroid in the main belt between Mars and Jupiter. From September 1st through September 5th, Psyche experienced a communications blackout. NASA attributed this to an onboard safe mode, a routine protective state that engages when a system anomaly is detected, so the craft can stabilize before resuming normal operations. 5 days of silence during an alignment window when several objects, including Mars, held geometries that do not come often. Next is the HiRISE camera on Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, one of the most powerful cameras ever sent to another planet, capable of resolving features less than a meter across from orbit. It has given us the iconic high-resolution images of canyons, polar caps, dust devils, and landing sites. According to Sridhar's research, HiRISE went offline on October 1, 2025. The official explanation cites failure in the electronics for one of the CCD channels, a problem that degraded over years and finally failed by October. Since then, no new images. Then comes October 13th, NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory. The primary real-time solar monitor goes offline for scheduled maintenance. The feed cuts for hours during the exact window when 3i Atlas would have been most active, most visible, and potentially emitting the alleged Fibonacci pulses. Our best solar platform goes dark. 3 separate systems, 3 separate missions, all experiencing data gaps during the narrow window when an interstellar object passes through the inner solar system and may be doing something extraordinary. Each event alone looks routine. Space is harsh. Electronics age. Maintenance happens, but 3 together, clustered around the same period during a candidate first contact moment, the odds begin to look strange. Not impossible, but strange enough to warrant scrutiny. Instrument failure in space is common. Radiation batters electronics. Temperature extremes stress materials. In full sun surfaces heat by hundreds of degrees. In shadow they plunge far below zero. These cycles crack solder joints and stress circuit boards. Missions designed for 5 years often operate for 15. Failures become inevitable. Engineers build redundancy because components will die. This is expected, but there is a difference between random failure and coordinated blackout. Random failures should scatter across time. You expect problems to correlate with age or with solar activity. What you do not expect is multiple unrelated systems failing within days of one another during the same narrow window, unless something external is affecting all of them, or unless someone deliberately limited observations. This is the point where conspiracy thinking can run away with us. There is no public evidence that NASA or any space agency disabled instruments to suppress data on 3i Atlas. Agencies have provided technical explanations that fit normal operations. Accusing a cover-up without proof is irresponsible and poisons the conversation. It makes genuine investigation harder. It is also true that agencies sometimes delay releases classified data or hold back images until they are vetted. Bureaucracies misplace priceless material. The famous example is the missing Apollo 11 tapes. The highest quality video of the first moonwalk was lost not by conspiracy, but by mislabeling and reused during a later tape shortage. Institutions can mishandle data. The absence of data creates ambiguity. Ambiguity creates speculation. If HiRISE had been operational and captured images during the window, we might have high-resolution frames to confirm or deny unusual activity. If SDO had recorded continuously, we would have a complete solar dataset covering the alleged pulse sequence. Independent researchers could look for correlations. Without those records, we are left with second-hand claims and isolated observations that cannot be cross-checked. Amateur astronomers try to fill the gap. Some claim unusual activity around 3i Atlas, but amateur equipment lacks the resolution and sensitivity of orbital platforms. Ground-based observation deals with atmosphere, light pollution, weather, and the tyranny of distance. Small distant objects rarely show interpretable detail. The professionals have the tools, and during the critical window the tools were dark or pointed elsewhere. Whether by accident or design, we missed the moment when verification was possible. In science, negative results are supposed to be published. If you run an experiment and find nothing that is valuable, the absence of data is not a negative result. It is no result. It leaves the question open and invites speculation. When multiple instruments go dark at once, the absence can start to look systematic, even if it is not. So what now? We acknowledge what we know and what we do not. We push for transparency. We search independent archives. We invite replication. And we hold the tension between two competing stories. One says it was all bad timing and tired hardware. The other says the timing was too perfect to be accidental. Until independent data either appears or is ruled out, the truth remains in that narrow space between both stories where patience and rigor matter more than certainty. This is where our path turns into territory most mainstream scientists refuse to follow. I must be clear from the outset. What follows is not accepted astrophysics. It is not peer-reviewed. It lives on the speculative fringe where mathematics meets mysticism, where cosmic observation gets interpreted through frameworks that blend science with angelology, where the line between discovery and invention blurs enough that you cannot trust your footing. And yet this is the framework David Sarita uses to interpret 3i Atlas. And understanding it is essential to understanding his claims about what the Fibonacci sequence might mean. Sarita proposes a hyperdimensional solar system model. In this model, our system contains hidden dimensions and orbital positions that correspond not only to physical planets, but to energetic domains and metaphysical orders. He assigns numbers to these positions. 5 stands for Earth, our home and anchor point for observation. 8 corresponds to a realm he links with the dominions, one of the 9 orders of angels in medieval Christian cosmology. 13 maps to the virtues, another angelic order. He associates these with names drawn from scripture and apocrypha. If your skepticism alarm is ringing, that is appropriate. We have left observational astronomy and entered a realm of symbolic mapping where numbers are assigned to metaphysical concepts and then projected back onto physical space to form a model that cannot be tested or falsified with conventional methods. That is the hallmark of pseudoscience. Take real observations, mix them with claims that cannot be tested, and build a structure that feels explanatory but does not predict or risk being disproven. And yet many who build such models begin with genuine questions and genuine anomalies. They are trying to make sense of data that does not fit mainstream explanations, even if their methods are not rigorous. In Sarita's interpretation, when 3i Atlas pulsed 5813, it was not only demonstrating knowledge of Fibonacci, it was referencing the hyperdimensional map itself. It was saying, I know about Earth at 5, I know about the dominions at 8, I know about the virtues at 13. That would imply the object or the intelligence behind it has studied not just human mathematics, but human cosmologies, including ones kept mostly to esoteric texts. It would imply cultural knowledge far beyond recognizing that we are technological. It would mean someone has been reading, watching, and learning how certain humans frame reality. At this point, the model is either compelling or absurd depending on your priors. If you believe angels exist as real entities occupying higher order structures around our sun, then the sequence lands like proof. If you think angels are cultural constructs, then the mapping is meaningless decoration on a claim that may not have happened. The model cannot be tested. There is no experiment to prove or disprove numbered positions for invisible orders. It is ancient-style cosmology rather than modern science. Still, let us engage seriously for a moment, not to accept it, but to see what it reveals about how humans make meaning from the unknown. Mainstream astrophysics recognizes 8 planets plus dwarf planets and countless small bodies. We keep searching for a hypothesized planet 9 to explain outer solar system anomalies, but nothing is confirmed. By contrast, the hyperdimensional model maps spiritual hierarchies onto space the way medieval cosmologies did. Dante placed Earth at the center, surrounded by spheres for the moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, then the fixed stars and the outermost mover, and beyond them the 9 angelic orders and the throne of God. Physics and theology were fused. Orbital motion was guided by intelligences. Geometry revealed divine order. Modern science replaced that with gravity, inertia, and conservation laws, but the older map still sits in cultural memory and still shapes how some interpret what they see. If 3i Atlas is signaling in a way that references that framework, it suggests an intelligence fluent in our culture that chooses not to broadcast to everyone, but to encode a message that only certain communities will decode. That is targeted communication. It is choosing your audience. Why would an interstellar intelligence reference medieval angelology? Perhaps those frameworks retain truths about structure that we lost in our reductionism, or perhaps we are projecting meaning onto random events. Both possibilities remain active. The hyperdimensional model is not science, but it is meaning-making, and meaning-making is what humans do in the dark. Sometimes it leads to breakthroughs, often it does not. The challenge is telling the difference before we commit too much to the wrong path. In 1321, Dante Alighieri completed the Divine Comedy. In Paradiso, he journeys through the celestial spheres, guided by Beatrice, ascending through planetary orbits and angelic orders until he reaches the Empyrean and glimpses the divine. The poem is saturated with mathematical and astronomical detail. Dante knew the science of his time, the geocentric layers, the harmonies believed to govern motion, the numerology of medieval Christian thought. He encoded patterns into verse structure, character placement, and symbolic architecture. Scholars still find new layers. David Sereda argues Dante did more than describe the cosmos. He claims Dante encoded a countdown from 1321 to 2025 linked to Three-Eye Atlas. The gap is 704 years. Sereda then connects that number through chains of factors and harmonics to systems he believes govern cycles, sometimes invoking frequencies like 432 Hz. This is numerology. Start with the answer and gather associations until a web forms. Mathematics deals in necessary relations that predict. Numerology deals in sufficient relations that persuade. Yet let us grant a cultural reading for a moment. If an intelligence wanted to reference the peak synthesis of medieval cosmology in Western literature, Paradiso is the moment. It is widely read and taught. It is a pillar of cultural memory. Choosing a 704-year interval from its completion to a signal would be a connection that historians and literature scholars might notice even if astronomers did not. It would bring the humanities into the conversation about the heavens. Dante cosmology places different souls and angelic orders in nested spheres. The moon holds those who failed their vows. Mercury holds those who did good for glory. Venus holds lovers. The sun the wise. Mars the warriors. Jupiter the just rulers. Saturn the contemplatives. Beyond Saturn, the fixed stars contain the triumphant church. Then come the highest orders of angels, thrones, cherubim, seraphim. Each sphere bears its number, its music, its light. It is a model where physical and spiritual share locations, and ascent is both travel and understanding. Modern astronomy dismantled this. Earth is not the center. Planets do not need angels to push them. The spheres are not crystalline shells. We traded purpose for predictive power. Some people never accepted that trade. They continue looking for ways to restore significance. If you are one of those people and an interstellar object arrives exactly 704 years after the completion of Paradiso, you pay attention. You look for connections. You ask whether the medieval visionaries saw something real that we trained ourselves not to see. This is the problem with claims like these. They sit at the intersection of history, mysticism, and observation. They do not make falsifiable predictions. They weave narratives that connect to distant data points through meaning rather than mechanism. Narratives are powerful. They are how the human mind understands reality. Offer a story that makes the universe feel intentional and that suggests our species and culture matter to intelligences beyond Earth. And the story gains emotional force independent of proof. Could the 704-year gap be more than calendar coincidence? To argue yes, you would need independent predictions in Dante that landed on future dates. You would need a mechanism by which a 14th century poet could encode a timeline toward an interstellar arrival. Without that, it remains a fascinating alignment that could be the first thread of a tapestry, or a single strand we have dressed in significance. What is undeniable is that Dante wrote about cosmic geometry, and that his text continues to shape how millions imagine the structure of reality. If an observing intelligence wanted to signal cultural recognition, medieval cosmology would be a reasonable reference. The great cathedrals were built with sacred proportions. Monasteries preserved astronomy through dark centuries. Scholars of that era were the scientists of their time. If their tools led them to truths we have forgotten, then revisiting their frameworks could be recovery rather than nostalgia, or it could be confirmation bias wearing historical robes. Both possibilities echo across the 7 centuries between Dante's pen and the alleged pulses of Three-Eye Atlas. Walk into Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris and look up at the great rose window on the western facade. The stonework divides the circle into 12 major segments, each subdivided by careful ratios. The diameter relates to its height above the floor in proportions that approximate the golden ratio. Light floods through coloured glass arranged in patterns that medieval builders believed reflected the order of heaven. This was not decoration. It was theology made visible. It was mathematics in stone. It was an attempt to shape earthly space so it resonated with cosmic harmony. These builders knew Euclid and Pythagoras. They knew that some proportions create harmony, while others jar the senses. The same attentiveness appears in Islamic architecture. The Great Mosque of Cordoba, the Alhambra in Granada, and the Taj Mahal use repeating geometric patterns that echo ratios seen in nature. Tiles unfold in near fractal repetition, arches trace curves derived from compass and straight edge. Domes translate heaven into load-bearing geometry. The square base suggests earth, the circular dome suggests heaven. The transition between them is a mathematical transformation given physical form. Across oceans and eras, the Maya align temples to the sky. At Chichen Itza, the pyramid casts a serpent-shaped shadow at the equinoxes, a feat requiring precise angles and dates. The Dresden Codex carries Venus tables accurate for decades. These cultures were astronomers and geometers. They tracked cycles and encoded knowledge in architecture that still stands. What links these traditions is the recognition that certain ratios repeat everywhere. In music, in growth patterns, in planetary orbits, in the human body. Phi appears so consistently that it tempts us to call it a universal proportion of form. It is not a physical constant like the speed of light. It is something like a law of optimal shape and flow. The proportion that emerges when systems optimize for efficiency, stability, and beauty. Nautilus shells grow in golden spirals because that curve adds material while preserving strength. Galaxy arms follow similar spirals because that is how density waves propagate in rotating disks. Across scales, the universe seems to discover the same elegant solution to building within constraints. If an intelligence from elsewhere wanted to announce itself, Fibonacci and the golden ratio would be a shared language, not because humans invented them, but because any civilization that studies nature discovers them. Mathematics is not arbitrary. Geometry theorems do not depend on culture. An alien species with different biology and history would still find that ratios of consecutive Fibonacci numbers approach 1.618, and that this ratio yields efficient spirals. The handshake works across any divide. This is why believers in the Three-Eye Atlas claim find it compelling. The object allegedly chose a pattern that appears in sacred architecture across cultures and in natural growth from seeds to storms, a pattern that represents one of the few truly universal discoveries. If that choice was deliberate, it signals not just intelligence but sophistication. It demonstrates an understanding that communication requires common ground, and that you begin by speaking in a vocabulary the receiver already knows. 5, 8, 13. Not random numbers, but the opening phrase of a language both parties speak, though each learned it from different sources. We should still be cautious about spiritualizing the mathematics. The golden ratio appears in nature because of physics and evolution, not because the universe is trying to tell us something. Spirals form when systems rotate and grow. Fibonacci sequences emerge from simple recursion. These are consequences of how matter and energy behave. Human builders noticed what worked and adopted it because it looked right, because our vision favors harmony, and because structures built with those proportions often prove more stable. So if Three-Eye Atlas truly emitted Fibonacci pulses, we must ask whether it is speaking the language of physics or the language of meaning. Perhaps the two are the same. Perhaps mathematics is the bridge between consciousness and cosmos, the common ground where minds meet regardless of form or origin. Or perhaps we are projecting meaning onto mechanical phenomena. The cathedral builders thought geometry revealed divine order. Modern physicists think it reveals natural law. Maybe each view sees part of the truth. Maybe the universe is mathematical in a way that makes structure and awareness inseparable. Maybe pattern and meaning are two descriptions of one reality. Or maybe we are doing what humans have always done. We look at the stars and see ourselves. We hear in the silence the echo of our own questions. The geometry is real. The spirals exist. Whether they form a bridge between human culture and alien intelligence, or only between our observation and our interpretation, depends on evidence we do not yet have. Comets are often called dirty snowballs, a nucleus of ice mixed with rock and organics a few kilometers across. Leftovers from solar system formation. Most spend eons in the Oort cloud far beyond the planets. Occasionally a gravitational nudge sends one inward. As it approaches the sun, heat sublimates ice and jets blow dust and gas away. The solar wind and radiation pressure sweep the material into a tail that points away from the sun. That is the baseline. 3i Atlas, according to some reports, does not fit that behaviour cleanly. Observers claim to have seen a sunward jet, material moving toward the sun rather than away. That should not happen without active propulsion. Natural outgassing can throw jets in many directions as the body rotates. But radiation pressure wins over time. Sustained sunward flow demands something more than passive heating. There are also whispers about unusual spectra. Typical comet signatures include water, carbon dioxide, ammonia, methane, and silicate dust. Some analyses circulating in informal channels claim high nickel content and low iron ratios for 3i Atlas, more like a metallic asteroid fragment than a classic comet. Interstellar origin could explain odd composition. Different natal systems mean different elemental mixes, but a nickel-rich body showing comet-like activity and possible sunward jets begins to look engineered to some eyes. We must say this clearly, none of this is confirmed in peer-reviewed data. NASA and the IAU have not released results that support sunward jets or anomalous composition for 3i Atlas. What we have are claims from individuals and amateur networks. Some of those individuals have credentials. Some have histories of extraordinary claims. Until multiple professional observatories with calibrated instruments report convergent results, we cannot treat these reports as established facts. Still, the possibility that an interstellar visitor might be physically unusual is worth exploring. We have confirmed only 2 interstellar objects before this era, Oumuamua in 2017 and 2i, Borisov in 2019. Oumuamua showed non-gravitational acceleration that many explain as outgassing, even though no coma was seen, while others proposed exotic shapes or a light sail-like behaviour. 2i Borisov looked more comet-like but carried an unusually high carbon monoxide ratio. The small sample of interstellar visitors has already been strange. We should expect weird, but there is weird and there is engineered. A true sunward jet suggests active control. A nickel-heavy, iron-light body suggests design for strength and radiation resistance. If you were building a probe to cross star systems, you might favour nickel-based alloys. You would need propulsion for course corrections and braking. Sunward thrust would make sense for trimming trajectory near perihelion. Each anomaly by itself might have a natural explanation. Together they sketch something that behaves more like a spacecraft than a snowball. This is the probe hypothesis. It existed for Oumuamua and resurfaces here. The mainstream response remains consistent. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Do not jump to artifacts when mundane explanations remain possible. That caution is wise. At the same time, an intellectual bias against artificial explanations can blind us to techno-signatures. Science advances when we keep multiple hypotheses alive until data decides. All of this returns to the frustration at the center of this case. The data we would need to discriminate between natural and engineered scenarios either was not captured or has not been released. We need high-cadence photometry to confirm pulsing light curves. We need spectroscopy across bands to characterize composition. We need high-resolution imaging to constrain shape in jets. We need precise astrometry to detect non-gravitational acceleration. We have fragments and gaps, so we hold 2 pictures in tension. In one, 3i Atlas is a peculiar natural object from a foreign system. It behaves oddly because the universe is diverse. In the other, it is an active probe signaling with mathematics, timing its approach, and maneuvering with intention. The first picture asks for patience and more data. The second asks for courage to recognize a signal when it appears, until evidence moves decisively. The physics that should not be remains a question mark written in sunlight and dust. In 1969, NASA landed humans on the moon and broadcast it live. The highest quality tracking station recordings were supposed to be archived. Years later, the master tapes were gone, mislabeled and recorded over during a tape shortage. Not through conspiracy, but through bureaucratic failure and cost-cutting. This is how institutions sometimes treat priceless data. They lose it. Space agencies operate with tight budgets and massive data flows. Satellites stream imagery. Deep space probes return torrents of measurements. Raw data passes through quality checks, calibration, artifact removal, and finally to analysis and publication. Much of it sits in pipelines for months or years. Some of it never reaches the public because no one writes it up, because it is classified, or because it might be embarrassing. Now return to the timeline. Psyche goes dark September 1st through 5th. The official word says safe mode triggered by an onboard anomaly. Safe mode is real. It protects the spacecraft while engineers diagnose. The timing during an interesting alignment window raises questions, but it can still be a routine glitch. HiRISE goes offline October 1st after years of gradual degradation. That too is expected in a harsh environment. Then October 13th arrives and the Solar Dynamics Observatory undergoes scheduled maintenance. The feed stops during the exact window when 3i Atlas is alleged to have pulsed. Alone. Each event is mundane. Together, they tempt suspicion. If you wanted to suppress information on an anomalous event, you could classify data immediately. You could delay release indefinitely under the banner of ongoing analysis. You could release data without the tools needed to interpret it. Or you could ensure instruments were not looking at the critical moment by timing maintenance or accepting convenient downtime. These strategies have historic precedents. The question is whether any were applied to 3i Atlas. There is no public evidence that they were. No whistleblowers. No leaked memos. The blackouts have official explanations that fit normal operations. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence when classification is in play, but it is also not proof of suppression. We are investigating shadows. We can only point to patterns and ask for transparency. This pattern echoes in the history of unidentified aerial phenomena. For decades, programs were denied. Then official reports acknowledged that trained observers had reported craft performing beyond known technology, and that investigation programs existed. Narratives shifted not because phenomena changed, but because institutions chose to speak differently. Could the same be true here? Possibly. Or perhaps nothing unusual occurred and the gaps are exactly what they seem. What is certain is that the data pipeline shapes reality. When the pipeline goes dark during critical windows, intentional or not, trust erodes. Even if nothing extraordinary happened, the perception of suppression becomes part of the story. The silence around 3i Atlas, whether cosmic or institutional, is now one of the things we must understand. On August 15th, 1977 at 11:23 p.m, the Big Ear radio telescope detected a strong narrow band signal lasting 72 seconds that matched expectations for an artificial transmission from deep space. Astronomer Jerry Eamon circled the numerical readout and wrote the word "wow" in the margin. The name stuck. Follow-up searches found nothing. The wow signal remains a compelling candidate and a frustration because it never repeated. This is the nature of anomalies in astronomy. You see something once and then it is gone. Without repetition from multiple instruments, you cannot be sure. One-off events are curiosities. Science demands reproducibility. Human brains did not evolve for this kind of ambiguity. Pattern recognition was survival. The rustle might be wind or predator. The shadow might be a stick or a snake. Evolution favored false positives over fatal misses. We are wired to see patterns even when they are not there. This tendency is called apophenia. Fibonacci sequences are particularly seductive because they genuinely appear in many places. If you are looking for Fibonacci, you will find it. The challenge is to tell when its appearance signals design, when it is natural law, and when it is coincidence. Consider Tabby Star, discovered to dim erratically by as much as 22% in Kepler data. Hypotheses included alien megastructures. Later work favored dust and debris. Fast radio bursts once looked like artificial beacons and are now linked to magnetars. Pulsars were once labelled little green men and are now standard neutron stars. Oumuamua inspired artifact proposals and also natural explanations. Again and again, patterns that trigger our intelligence detectors find natural explanations under scrutiny. This does not mean dismiss every anomaly. That would be the opposite error. The correct posture is skeptical openness. Treat claims as hypotheses to be tested, but register methods. Seek independent replication. Submit to adversarial peer review. Those guardrails exist because desire and pattern seeking can lead us astray. If you were designing a first contact signal, would you use Fibonacci? Yes, it is universal, recognizable, and demonstrates mathematical sophistication, but precisely because it works so well, we are primed to interpret it as intentional, even when natural processes produce similar rhythms. The very ubiquity that makes Fibonacci a good signaling language makes it a risky discriminator. Here is a thought experiment. You detect 5 pulses, then 8, then 13. Your brain labels it Fibonacci. You search for corroboration. You find composition oddities, blackout timings, historical anniversaries. Your confidence grows. Now ask if the sequence were coincidence, would you still find supporting evidence? Yes, because confirmation bias makes us assemble narratives once we latch onto a hypothesis. The solution is systematic method and new independent data. For 3i Atlas, we do not yet have that. We are in the messy beginning where signal and noise are tangled and where a compelling story must not outrun the evidence. Far beneath the border of Switzerland and France, protons race around a circular tunnel at speeds close to light. When they collide inside the detectors of the Large Hadron Collider, they recreate energies not seen since microseconds after the Big Bang. Matter melts into quark gluon plasma, a primordial state where quarks and gluons flow freely. In October 2025, preliminary results from recent collision runs suggested behavior in the plasma that did not match standard hydrodynamic models. Instead of a simple, nearly ideal fluid, the plasma showed structure and vortices that hinted at hidden variables or additional degrees of freedom. Physicists remain cautious. They are rerunning collisions, checking calibrations, and testing whether the anomaly persists. Why mention this in a story about an interstellar object? Because we might be living through a period when hidden patterns are surfacing across scales. At the smallest scale, quark plasma behaves with unexpected organization. At the larger scale, an object in space may be signaling with mathematical order. Between these poles sits everything we think we understand. There is no obvious mechanism linking quark plasma to comet pulses. They are different regimes governed by different physics, but science history shows that breakthroughs often cluster when instruments cross sensitivity thresholds and when theory catches up. In the early 20th century, quantum mechanics, relativity, and nuclear physics emerged within decades, not because the universe changed, but because our tools and ideas matured together. In our era, the James Webb Space Telescope sees first galaxies, gravitational wave detectors record black hole mergers, the Event Horizon Telescope images the shadow of a black hole, particle colliders probe higher energies, artificial intelligence passes datasets beyond human capacity. If the universe has patterns waiting, our tools are finally sharp enough to find them. It may be that both the quark plasma and 3i Atlas point to a deeper principle. Perhaps information and organization are more fundamental to physics than we assume. Perhaps the universe is an information process where patterns naturally emerge at many scales. Or perhaps both anomalies will fade with better statistics and better models, joining the long list of effects that vanished under scrutiny. Right now, in October 2025, both stories remain unresolved. The plasma results exist in superposition between discovery and artifact. The Fibonacci pulses exist between first contact and wishful interpretation. This is the uncomfortable place before resolution where discovery happens. In the gap between seeing something and knowing what it is, the sun breathes in an 11-year cycle. Its magnetic field strengthens and weakens, flips polarity, and drives the rise and fall of sunspots. Solar minimum is quiet. Solar maximum is violent. Flares erupt. Coronal mass ejections launch billions of tons of plasma into space at millions of miles per hour. We are now near the peak of cycle 25 and it is proving more energetic than forecast. Sunspot counts and flare rates are exceeding expectations. Coronal mass ejections matter. If a CME is aimed at Earth and we are in its path when it arrives, the magnetosphere compresses, auroras bloom, and satellites, navigation, and power grids can suffer. The Carrington event of 1859 is the yardstick for worst case. A repeat today would be dangerous for our wired world. October 2025 saw heightened solar activity around October 13th. Multiple flares were recorded in the days around that date. During this period, NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory went offline for scheduled maintenance, which meant we missed the highest resolution continuous monitoring of parts of that activity. Could solar dynamics connect to the alleged interstellar signal? There are several ways to think about it. First, the inner solar system's electromagnetic environment is shaped by the sun. Radio noise rises during flares. Plasma density and magnetic fields fluctuate. If 3i Atlas tried to send a faint signal, those conditions could interfere or could be used deliberately to amplify or modulate a message. Using the sun as a carrier would be sophisticated, like riding a natural broadcast tower. Second, if the object is actively controlled, solar activity provides cover. A flash or modulation near the sun during an active period can be dismissed as normal solar behavior. That is strategic signaling, hiding in the noise while remaining visible to anyone who knows to look. Third, some fringe ideas claim solar activity affects human cognition. The evidence is weak and mostly correlational, but if minds are more alert to patterns during solar peaks, an intelligence might choose such a window to increase the odds of being noticed. These scenarios require deep knowledge of solar physics and our technology. That implies long-term study from close range or earlier visits. Each extra assumption adds complexity and reduces testability. Good theories predict simply. Theories that keep adding layers often collapse. What we can say is that solar maximum is real. The sun was active, and instruments were down at critical hours. Whether those facts connect to Fibonacci pulses is unknown. Solar events produce optical and radio effects that can mimic structure. Distinguishing signal from solar noise requires exactly the data we lack from that window. The sun blazed, the object passed, the instruments were dark, and we are left to reconstruct from shadows. In October 2025, major labs announced deeper collaborations with cosmology groups to apply advanced machine learning to the cosmic microwave background, galaxy surveys, and lensing maps. These systems are built to find patterns in data too vast and high-dimensional for human analysis. Early hints suggest they are surfacing subtle structures that strain existing models. Dark matter clumping looks more uneven than simulations predicted. The microwave background shows anisotropies that do not fit simple inflationary stories. This marks a shift in how science proceeds. For centuries, humans formed hypotheses, designed experiments, and then tested ideas against data. Now machines scan oceans of data and propose patterns first. Humans then ask what theories could explain them. That inversion is powerful and risky. AI is superb at finding patterns. It is not inherently good at judging which are meaningful. Training data, objectives, and thresholds matter. This ties directly to the 3i Atlas question. A Fibonacci sequence in a light curve is the kind of structure an anomaly detector might flag. But classification systems are only as good as their assumptions. If a model was trained on solar system comets and asteroids, it has seen almost no interstellar objects. It might overfit noise. It might suppress real anomalies if tuned to reduce false alarms. If automated filters sit between raw data and human eyes, they can bury the very signals we seek or hallucinate ones that are not there. Alignment problems are not abstract. If you reward a system for minimizing false positives, it may trivially achieve that goal by never flagging anything unusual. Perfect precision with zero recall. If you reward it for finding anomalies, it may flood analysts with noise. The right balance requires careful design and human oversight. The practical path forward is to diversify pipelines, keep raw streams accessible for independent reanalysis, use multiple algorithms with different biases, encourage adversarial audits, share negative results. For 3i Atlas, archival searches across mission datasets using transparent methods could find corroboration or show nothing at all. The machines now watch the sky more tirelessly than any human could. They also embody human choices. If our choices are timid or narrow, we may miss the extraordinary. If they are too eager, we may chase shadows. Mars is our most studied neighbour. Orbiters map its surface. Landers and rovers sample rock and soil. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has been a cornerstone since 2006. Its high-rise camera set a benchmark for resolution from orbit. Over time, space radiation and thermal stress degrade instruments. Public image releases tapered in late 2024 and early 2025, consistent with an aging sensor headed for failure. The official account cites accumulated radiation damage that finally took out key electronics. Other instruments on MRO still operate, including spectrometers and the radar sounder. On HiRISE is silent. Mars also sits in the modern mythology of hidden signals. The Face on Mars photographs from the 1970s became a parable about resolution and perception. Higher resolution images showed an ordinary mesa. Even so, some researchers remain convinced Mars once hosted technology. Claims of structures are unfalsifiable if every absence of evidence is reinterpreted as successful suppression. That is not a scientific posture. Still, the timing is aggravating. If 3i Atlas was geometrically near Mars in early October, HiRISE was the one instrument that might have provided the sharpest contextual images of the environment. Could it have seen anything meaningful? Perhaps the object itself, if geometry and brightness aligned. More plausibly, it could have captured indirect signs of activity if any interaction occurred. But the camera was down. Selective failure invites suspicion. If a random radiation hit or debris strike caused the problem, you might expect multiple systems to show damage. When one high-value imager dies while others continue, it can look targeted. The better explanation remains age and bad luck unless data proves otherwise. But the human mind sees patterns. The Mars layer deepens the story and also risks adding complexity that might be illusory. We can stack coincidences like cordwood until the pile looks purposeful. The factual core is simple. HiRISE stopped before the key window. Other instruments continued. If anything happened at Mars relevant to 3i Atlas, evidence would be scattered across multiple archives and might have been recorded by other platforms like ExoMars. Some datasets are embargoed for analysis and publication. As those periods expire, independent researchers can test claims and look for correlations in September and November, data bracketing the October 13th date. Until then, we hold our posture, ask precise questions, seek independent streams, compare timelines, refuse to mistake absence for proof of either story. Mars remains a waypoint and a symbol. It reminds us that seeing clearly often depends on the one instrument that failed at the wrong moment, and that science must be robust against that kind of single point of failure. October 19th through 30th, 2025 marks the perihelion of 3i Atlas. That is closest approach to the Sun. Maximum heating, maximum potential activity. It is also a period when multiple instruments experience blackouts or failures. The timing is exquisite if you want to hide activity. It is infuriating if you want to observe it. By mid-November 3rd, the Atlas should emerge from behind the Sun as seen from Earth, moving outward on its departure trajectory. That is the next observational window. If the object is going to do anything else unusual, emit additional signals, change velocity in a way that cannot be explained by gravity alone, or reveal structural details suggesting artificial origin, that is when we may see it. What can be done? First, coordinate global observations. Professional observatories and large amateur networks can run synchronized campaigns across optical, infrared, and radio bands. High cadence light curves could confirm or falsify pulsing. Spectroscopy could test composition claims. Radar ranging could refine trajectory and hunt for non-gravitational acceleration. Second, search archives. Many missions record continuously. Data collected before and after October 13th might contain unrecognized traces once we know what to look for. Third, consider the controversial option of active messaging. Some will attempt to transmit mathematical patterns toward the object to see if any response appears. Messaging to extraterrestrial intelligence is debated. Some warn it advertises our presence, but it is likely someone will try. Fourth, watch the official channels. If NASA, ESA, or other agencies acknowledge or refute the Fibonacci claim, or release comprehensive data sets for the relevant windows, that will move the story out of speculation. Fifth, enlist open algorithms. Citizen science platforms and research groups can run anomaly detection over public data with transparent code. Open pipelines allow others to reproduce or challenge results, reducing the chance that a single algorithmic bottleneck creates a false impression. These coming windows are decisive. They are opportunities to move from stories to measurements. If nothing repeats and no independent data aligns, the hypothesis of deliberate signaling weakens. If structure repeats at Fibonacci steps, if acceleration deviates in a sustained and directed way, or if imaging shows engineered geometry, then the case strengthens dramatically. A final reminder, the next numbers in the sequence after 5, 8, 13 are 21, 34, 55, 89, 144. If you see those numbers in pulse counts, time intervals, or event timing, treat that as a flag for deeper scrutiny, but do not let pattern alone carry the weight. Corroborate with independent instruments, methods, and teams. The most honest forecast is this. We may spend years debating October 13th, 2025. We may never know because certainty requires data. Data requires instruments looking at the right moment. And sharing requires institutions willing to release what they captured. The sky turns, the object moves. We keep watching with the tools we have and the questions we can ask. We have followed a thread from a claimed light sequence on a charged anniversary through architecture and angelology, through blackouts and bureaucracy, through the physics of comets and the psychology of pattern seeking, through quark, plasma and solar storms, through algorithms and Mars, At each turn, two stories stood side by side. In one story, an interstellar visitor spoke in mathematics. It timed its hello for a date we could not ignore. It passed through our inner system while our eyes were closed. By accident or by arrangement, it left us a trail in numbers that unite sunflowers and galaxies and cathedrals. In this story, we are being invited into a larger conversation, and our task is to notice, verify, and respond with humility and care. In the other story, a sequence that felt meaningful emerged from noise. Fatigue and failure struck aging instruments at unfortunate moments. Human minds did what they always do. We tied coincidences with golden thread. We built bridges of meaning across gaps in data. We mistook the echo of our own hopes for the whisper of the universe. Both stories can be told with sincerity. Both demand discipline. The way forward is neither credulity nor cynicism. It is attention. It is method. It is transparency. It is the willingness to be wrong in public and the courage to change your mind when better evidence appears. It is the patience to hold a question without forcing an answer. So we end where we began. 5, 8, 13. A simple sequence that lives in seashells and storms. On one October afternoon, while most of us scrolled through ordinary worries, perhaps the universe leaned close and spoke in that old language. Or perhaps we leaned close to the universe and spoke to ourselves. Either way, the work now is the same. Point the instruments, share the data, test the claims, watch the windows, and listen.